welcome. You are listening to WCEG Network. We are Worldwide Community Empowerment, where we speak life into the community. Log on to WCEGTalkRadio.com, or you can watch us live on your smart TV, on the Roku cable channel, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and now on Fanbase and Blue Sky. Search for WCEG and subscribe on all social media platforms. I am Vincent Cheeks, your host of Conversations in Education for the next hour. Make sure that you download our free WCEG mobile apps. You can also say, hey, Alexa, play WCEG Talk Radio. Listen to WCEG on any of our 12 podcast distribution platforms. Last but not least, the topics and opinions are those of the show host, just me today, and not WCEG Network. And as always, thank you for your continued support. With that being said, I also want to add that today's show, I want to put a trigger warning label onto it because we're going to discuss some sensitive topics. So if you are triggered by racism, if you are triggered by child sexual assault, I would ask you to remove any children from the room and or not listen to this broadcast. But before we get into that, I'm going to make a few announcements. The first announcement is, as I told you all last month, we are preparing for the KLG Variety Showcase, which will be on Saturday, July 19th at 3 p.m. At the South Fulton Library. Again, Saturday, July 19th, 2025 at 3 p.m. at the South Fulton Library. It is going to be a spectacular event. This is going to be my 4th year doing it with Mr. Kenny, and it has grown each year that I've been there. I have a couple of audition announcements. So if you know of any young people that are interested in displaying their gifts and talents, please send them our way. So the next audition will be Saturday, May 17th, which is this Saturday, 2 to 5:30 p.m. in Meeting Room B at South Fulton Library. The next audition will be Saturday, June 14th, 2 to 5:30 p.m. in Meeting Room B. And then the final audition will be Saturday, June 21st, 2 to 5:30 p.m. in Meeting Room B. And then on Saturday, July 12th, there will be a dress and final rehearsal for everyone who is going to be in the show. I'm looking forward to it. I'm super excited about it. These children amaze every year with their gifts and talents. And I look forward to seeing them in the next 10 to 15 years also. So yeah, make sure you send any talent gifted children our way. Also, I believe there is a talk radio station that is going to be turning 10 years old very soon. I believe the date is May 15th. Correct me if I'm wrong. But WCEG Network, we will be turning 10 years old on May 15th. I'm proud to say that I have been an early member of WCEG. I think my 10-year show will be mid-October of this year. So that'll be my 10-year anniversary. And I have to say, I'm super proud to be a part of this team. I'm super proud to work for my producer, Penny, and everyone else at the station that makes things happen behind the scenes. I know WCG is the brainchild of my producer, Penny. She's put a lot of hard work, sweat, tears, blood into making this grow. And like I said before, I couldn't be happier being a part of this team. So happy birthday to WCEG Talk Radio. And we have evolved into WCEG Network. So let's continue to continue to speak life into the community, and let's take this thing another 10, 20, 30 years. And uh, as the good professor or the good pastor Penny likes to say, to God be the glory. So thank you to all the support. Thank you to everyone who makes WCEG happen. And with that being said, I want to give a special shout out to my host mate, Mr. Norman Carter. I had a chance to listen to the show that he did yesterday, and he did an excellent job of highlighting Gwinnett Technical College, and he did a great job of speaking to the fact that we don't have to always push children towards 2 and 4 year degree programs, because that's not always for everybody. But these technical schools, they're growing. The programs that they have are expanding. And here's the great thing about technical schools. You're not going to pay as much money to get the education. So your tuition is going to be a lot less. They have internship programs where you can get on the job training. And then, from what I understand, a lot of these technical positions, they help you find jobs once you graduate. And a lot of these jobs are starting at over $50,000. So that's pretty good. So shout out to Norman Carter at Issues and Answers. I believe the gentleman he was interviewing was Mr. Melvin Everson, I believe his name was. So shout out to those two gentlemen for putting a spotlight on technical college. Shout out to Gwinnett Tech. I believe that's the school Mr. Everson works at. So great job, gentlemen. And I hope that more people look into that option. Another thing he said was that whatever you study in these technical fields, that's more than likely where you're going to get your job in. Whereas we know in 2, 4 year institutions, you might study something and get a job doing something totally different. So yes, shout out to all of the technical schools. And now before I jump into my program for today, I have one more question for my WCEG host mates, for my listening audience, for everyone. How is everyone maintaining and taking care of your mental health? I know there's a lot going on. They just did a review of Trump's first 100 days a couple of weeks ago, and there's been a lot has happened in the first 100 days. So I observe a lot. I'm on the social medias. I read a lot of articles, and there's a lot of tension. There's a lot of angst. There's a lot of anxiety and a lot of worry about a lot of things that Trump is doing. One thing I will say is, if it gets to be too overwhelming for you, detach, pull back. As the great Kendrick Lamar said, turn the TV off. Turn the TV off, turn the radio off, and seclude yourself and get away from all the noise for a minute to give yourself a chance to kind of calm down, process everything, process your emotions, process what you need to do as next steps for you and your family during what many consider to be very turbulent and unsure times. So make sure you are taking care of your mental health, whatever that may be. Detach from everything, exercise, meditate, but do something to make sure you are balancing yourself amidst all the chaos and negativity that is going on. Okay, and with that being said, there are 3 news stories, education news stories that I want to touch on today. Like I said earlier, they are pretty heavy topics, but they are things that need to be discussed. At least we keep repeating them. And so, with that being said, I'm going to get into the first story. The title of the story is Racism at Honey Creek Elementary School in Rockdale County, Conyers, Georgia. A mother demands accountability after her children, who are in first and fifth grade, found segregation era signs at Honey Creek Elementary School reading whites only in colors only, hanging above the water fountains in the cafeteria. There was a colors only sign over the water fountain in the cafeteria. There was a whites only sign found over a water fountain near the nurses' station. So the Rockdale County School District launched an investigation stating that the signs were part of a social studies lesson, though not one that aligns with the district's curriculum. The district stated that the lesson was supposed to be on Ruby Bridges and how Ruby Bridges integrated her Louisiana elementary school. The supposed lesson was supposed to be for first graders. And Miss Shirley Caesar, who is the superintendent of the district, she stated that although the signs were offensive, we do not believe there was any ill intent behind the incident. That seems pretty tone deaf to me, but we'll come back to that. Kingston, who was the fifth grader at the school who discovered the signs, Kingston stated, "We had just came back from recess and we were going through the cafeteria. I was going to get water, and over the water fountain, my friends told me to look up, and there was a note that said colors only." He said some of the children laughed and even made fun of him. He told his teacher about the sign, and the teacher, who was shocked, immediately took the sign down. But he would soon discover other troubling signs, including the one that read whites only by the nurse's office. My little sister saw the signs too. They weren't just in one place. Kingston said the signs made him feel alienated. I felt kind of offended and awkward because there's not just Black people in our school, there are also white people and other races. It made me feel like we were being separated by race. Kingston's mom, she says that both of her children are traumatized by this experience. Again, Superintendent Shirley Chesser stated, this was not a prank, but instead an unauthorized social studies activity for first graders. This activity did not align with district expectations, and we recognize that this may have been hurtful. The Georgia and Rockdale County NAACP, they put out statements saying, this isn't just an act of ignorance, it's a chilling echo of our nation's darkest chapters. It's a stark reminder that the legacy of segregation is not history for many, it is still a lived reality. Let us say this with absolute clarity. Racism has no place in our schools, in our communities, or in our country. This was not a prank. This was an act of racial hostility. I'm gonna say that again. This was an act of racial hostility that reopens wounds still felt by generations of Americans who have fought and continue to fight for equality and dignity. The Georgia NAACP and Rockdale County NAACP stand in solidarity with every student who felt devalued, every parent who felt betrayed, and every educator who believes in justice. We will not let this moment pass quietly. The group is now calling for accountability and systemic change. They would like to see mandatory anti-racism education, cultural competency training for students and staff, safe spaces for dialogue, and transparent engagement with parents and stakeholders. So, I have many questions about this story, but I'm going to start with the last paragraph I just read about the NAACP chapters. They're calling for accountability, systemic change. They want all of these programs, this training, and all of this stuff to happen. And I'll just say, for one, I don't think any of that is going to happen because it sounds a lot like DEI, if you ask me. And I think we all know where DEI is, where it stands today, with the present administration. So asking for all these social programs and all this retraining, for someone who it wouldn't help anyway, because as Martin Luther King stated, you cannot legislate morality. You cannot legislate humanity. So you could do all of these programs and you could still get the same outcome that you had with this situation. So again, I don't think any of that is going to happen, as far as what the Georgia and Rockdale County NAACP are asking for. And now I've read many articles about this situation. There are no recent articles as of April 29th, but the one thing I was looking for in the articles that I was searching was, who is this teacher? What is her name? No one is saying who this person was, even after Rockdale County did its investigation. And obviously they know who it is because they keep making statements like, the teacher executed an unauthorized lesson plan. Well, if all lesson plans are supposed to be authorized, then why didn't she get the lesson plan authorized? Sounds to me like she circumvented the process so she could do whatever she wanted to do, regardless of the hurt feelings and the outcomes and the impact that it was going to have on these students. So the superintendent, Shirley Chesser, Chesser, she stated that this was done without any ill intent. My question for her would be, how do you know that? Did the teacher that put these signs up tell you that? Because from all of the articles that I've read, I can only see ill intent behind this. Because here's what I know. I know that teachers go to college to be trained how to be teachers, educators. So they are relatively or pretty smart people. So you can't tell me that you didn't know. If this was supposed to be some type of lesson, then not only a lesson, but a lesson for first graders, then why were the signs put in common areas for all grades to see? Like the cafeteria, like by the nurse's office. If it's an approved curriculum or activity for first graders, why were these signs put in places where the entire school could see this? Also, this teacher, again, circumvented process because you're supposed to turn your lesson plans in and get them approved. That is willful to me. You made a conscious decision to say, I know I want to teach this lesson, but I don't want to get it approved by the higher ups. And I'm going to deal with it anyway and face whatever consequences, if any, after the fact. Because a lot of people believe that it's easier to apologize after the fact than to get permission beforehand. But even with stating anything about an apology, there's a question about what race is the teacher. That's a good question, because in none of the articles that I read, it doesn't give the teacher's name, it doesn't give her race. I'm assuming that the teacher is white because to me, it seems like a whole lot of cover up and a whole lot of downplaying the situation, especially with the superintendent saying um, she doesn't believe that the teacher had any ill will in this situation. I find that very, very hard to believe. If you're an educated person and you've gone to school and you know the history of this country, and even larger than that, you're in Conyers, Georgia, which is 30 minutes east of Atlanta. You know the racial history of Atlanta. You know the rich civil rights history that Atlanta has had going all the way back to Atlanta Race Massacre in 1906. So you can't tell me that this teacher didn't know any better. You can't tell me that this teacher didn't have any ill intent. What I guess my question would be then for the teacher, what impact did you think this would have on these students? Because for one, like Kingston said, he was just coming in from recess. Now, apparently the signs weren't there. The children got to school. Recess is in the middle of the day. Let me just say I'm surprised that this school still has recess. That's not a common thing anymore either. But anyway, the signs couldn't have been there when students got to school because they've gone to classes, they've gone to recess. This young man, Kingston, is coming from recess, and now he goes to get water and sees this for colors only sign over the water fountain. Who put him there? Do we not have cameras in the school to show exactly who this person is? Like, it just seems to be a lot of, oh, this happened. It was an accident. We'll do better to make sure things like this don't happen, which is pretty disingenuous to me. So I don't know. I'm anxious to see what the outcome of this is going to be, but again, I haven't seen anything about this teacher being fired. I haven't seen anything about this teacher being disciplined. So yeah, there's a lot more information to this. Another question: since true history is being removed from school curriculum, why is this acceptable? Should parents have been notified before their child had to tell? This is not acceptable. As many parents have stated, if this was truly a lesson that was supposed to be taught, it crossed many lines. And you're absolutely right. If you're going to do an activity of this magnitude, and knowing the heaviness of the content and the potential negative impacts that it may have on children, why would you not send a letter home to the parent first and either get their permission or have that parent opt their child out of that particular activity if they don't approve of it? But none of that was done. Again, this teacher just went rogue and said, I'm going to do what I want to do, and I'm going to be kind of shady about it and circumvent the process, because deep down inside, I know there aren't going to be any real consequences. Because like my superintendent just said, there was no ill intent. I guess we all, the community has to take the superintendent's word for it, because there has been nothing stated about who this teacher is and why she did what she did. So it's sad. And it is traumatizing for the students, for all of the students, really, not just Kingston and his sister, but every student at the school who was impacted by these signs. And I don't know, like, The superintendent made a statement saying that she realizes that this may have been hurtful. No, racism is hurtful. And I don't care what age it happens to you, um, it is going to have a lasting impact on you. I can remember my first real direct um, contact with racism for the first time, where it was actually directed at me with vitriol and hatred. Um, and it was when I was 15, 16 years old. I was 10th, 11th grade at the time. Um, and I was playing football, believe it or not. Um, we were having our spring football game. We had the game. After the game, we had like a meal for everybody who came out to the spring game. And there was one table that all the food was set up on, but somehow there were two lines coming together like this, and they merged at the end of the table, and then everybody all went that way down to the table to get their food. So when the lines were merging, when I got to the end of the table, I guess I merged in front of this white man. It wasn't a cutting because both lines were doing that. They were coming together and then merged in front of the person in front of you. Everybody's gonna get food, everybody's gonna. So when I went in front of this white man, I guess he um, took offense to that, and he leaned up in my ear, so where only I would be able to hear him, and he whispered in my ear, and I could feel his hot breath on my neck. And he said, "If you would have did this 50 years ago, N word, I would have had you strung up from a tree." Oh, well, I didn't. I was. It was so jarring and so unexpected and shocking. Like I didn't even really know what to say. So I turned around. I had my football helmet in my hand, and I looked this man in his eyes, and I said, "Say it again." I said, "Call me the N word again." And before you get to the period in that sentence, you're gonna be eating this helmet. And so, of course, now there's this big scene because everybody stopped. Everybody, listen. I am yelling at the top of my lungs because I don't understand how I just ended up in this space. Um, but when he said the words that he said, I could feel the hatred emanating from him. Um, and so my coaches came over, they grabbed me, they pulled me to the side. My mom was somewhere there. They found her. They pulled me to the side. They talked to me. They went over and talked to the white guy. He said whatever he said. Um, and I remember at the end of it, my football coach and my mom, they were all like, "Oh, it was just a misunderstanding. He apologizes." And they wanted me to shake his hand. And I was like, I'm not shaking that man's hand because he said what he said and he meant what he said. And the only reason he apologized is because y'all telling him to. Like, I'm not. And so eventually my mom did shake his hand, which I wasn't very happy about. And that I remember that happened on a Friday over the weekend. And the following Monday, we were at school, we were at lunch, and the guy who said this to me, he was the father of one of my teammates. And so I saw this particular teammate walking towards me um, during lunch. And so I stood up, getting ready to fight because I'm thinking he coming to confront me about threatening to hit his dad with a helmet. So the young boy walks over to me, and we locked eyes, and he extended his hand to me for me to shake his hand, which that kind of shocked me too. And I shook his hand, and he apologized to me for what his dad said. which let me know that, oh, your father is flaming racist. So, but it did mean a lot to me um, that his son came over to apologize to me. Um, but yeah, I still remember that. I remember that day very vividly, as if it happened yesterday. So yeah, these racist incidents, they have um, long-lasting impacts on people. I don't care if you're a child, I don't care if you're an adult. Um, it's going to have a negative impact on some type of way. Now, luckily for me, um, over the many years since that has happened, I have learned to take the power away from the N word, which that is it's an effort, it's a conscious effort in having to retrain your mind to not let negative words that used to impact you. And it has taken me, I started doing that in 2010, taking the power away from this word. And it's taken me all these 15 years to be at a point now where you can call me that and um, I'm not going to react the way you want me to react. I'll just say that. And as a community, I feel like we need to get to that point as a whole, to take away the power from these words, because these words don't have power to give it to them. If someone calls you an N-word and you know you're not N-word, it's not the truth, then you shouldn't let it bother you that much anyway. Um, but I understand that there is an intent behind when they call us out of names, when they call us these words. But we as a community have to understand that they know that when they call us these words, there's a certain reaction they have to get from us. And I've seen videos on social media over the past year of white people calling black people the N-word, and black people reacting violently. And I never try to tell someone how to react when you are being offended. But I am making a plea here today to say that we've got to take the power from this word. And I know we tried to do that as a community in the late 80s, early 90s when we stopped using ER and started using A. And that was the whole thing about taking the word back and making it our own, which if that was the case and we're making it our own, then we should stop letting other communities weaponize that word against us. I know I'm saying a mouthful. I know I'm saying a lot, because when this word is said to us, it's not just the word in that moment that hits us. It's the word that carries generational trauma and generational pain. And sometimes that word wakes up all of that generational trauma and pain in us. And we react however we're going to react. But it is possible to take the power away from words, but it takes some training, some work. One thing I want to say about this story I just told you about, the first article I read about it on Instagram, they have the comment section, and there were so many Black people in the comment section of the story saying, well, if the teacher really meant it as a lesson, then the only way you can really understand what it means is to get that firsthand experience. That firsthand experience counts for something. If that's what the teacher was doing, then I think that's a good idea. Where else is a child going to get that type of firsthand experience to learn what racism is? I can tell you one thing right now, they're going to get it a lot. Because I don't care where you are. Racism is global, okay? White racists in Europe and America have done a great job of making racism global. So there isn't anywhere you can go where you can escape racism. You know, I've heard people say, I'm moving here, I'm moving there, I'm getting out of the US, this, that, and other. Racism is everywhere. It may be a little bit more deeply entrenched and a little bit more aggressive here in the US, but it is everywhere. Um, and you're going to encounter it at some point. And so the best way is to have a plan of how you're going to, whether it's, well, the best thing to do is just leave, but have a plan for when if I encounter racism, and it's not more if, it's more of a when, because Donald Trump, Elon Musk, they're kicking over rocks, they're waking up racists, they're telling them to be you and be who you are. They're importing white South Africaners here to the States so they can import their hate. So yeah, the next 4 years are going to be trying, and there is going to be a lot, and you have to have a plan for when this hate confronts you. So please make a plan. Okay. I think that's all I have to say about this story. I know those young children are going to be traumatized. I hope the parents and the school system do something as far as counseling, so these children can work through their emotions and how they felt about this. I know if it was me, my child would be pulled out of Honey Creek Elementary School. I can't even imagine how the other teachers feel there, knowing that they're working with someone with this type of attitude. So yeah, all right. Moving on to the next story, which is a little, if you can believe it, this story is a little bit more worse and painful than the one I just said. This story is entitled San Diego, California. Teacher of the Year gets 30-year term. There was a elementary school teacher named Jacqueline Ma, who groomed and sexually assaulted 2 young boys in her elementary school classroom. Jacqueline Ma took advantage of her role as a 5th and 6th grade teacher at Lincoln Acres Elementary to manipulate her victims, luring them with gifts, special attention, and even completing their homework. The 36-year-old teacher pleaded guilty in February to 2 counts of forcible lewd acts on a child, 1 count of lewd act on a 1 count of a lewd act on a child, and 1 count of possessing child sexual abuse material. Police arrested Ma in March of 2023 after the mom of one of the victims reported inappropriate messages she found on a family tablet. Ma had groomed the boy for more than a year before sexually abusing him at 12 years old. Ma performed sex acts on the boy in her classroom over a 3-month period, while his parents thought he was attending an in-school, after-school basketball program. District Attorney Summer Steffen said this defendant violated the trust she had with her students in the most extreme and traumatic way possible, and her actions are despicable. Her victims will have to deal with a lifetime of negative effects, and her 30-year teacher sentence is appropriate. Is it? Is the 30-year prison term appropriate for someone who's in a position of authority who has negatively impacted the lives of 2 young boys, and they would have to deal with however this affects them personally, however this affects their family, and however this affects their future? So is 30 years really an appropriate sentence? There are probably more victims. These are the 2 that she got caught. And I saw this story yesterday, actually, and in the video they had on social media, uh, this lady, Jacqueline Ma, is boohoo crying. She is bawling her eyes out, and she's apologizing. I'm so sorry. I made a mistake in judgment. I made a mistake in blah 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 blah. And I'm just sitting there like, you're only crying because you're going to jail for 30 years. You're not crying because of what you did. You're not crying because of the long lasting impact that this is going to have on these two young boys. You are crying and blubbering and sounding like a complete fool because you got caught. That's it, period. I have no sympathy for people who harm children. I have been working with children since 2000. My only goal in working with children is to improve their lives, to educate them, to get them prepared for the world, and to be a productive human being in this society. There's no other reason you should be wanting to work with children. Um, and this lady won Teacher of the Year in 2023. And at that point, she had already abused the first boy. The first young boy she abused was in 2020. Um, and I don't know. I guess she figured she got away with that one, so let's keep it rolling. But I just feel like, how do we make sure that people that we put in positions over our children um, are there for the reasons they're supposed to be there, and they're doing the things that they're supposed to be doing? Um, this woman apparently was a great teacher. I mean, you have to be going above and beyond to win Teacher of the Year. But she also used the fact that people saw her as a good teacher, and used that to manipulate these two young boys, and used that to manipulate the people who she was pulling the wool over their eyes. This is just a tragic story all the way around. And I believe, as parents, I think, I don't want to say that. As parents, we have to do a better job of talking to our children about things that really matter. Most parents, our children come home from school, we ask them how did school go. And our children might say, "Oh, school was fine." What did you, if it's elementary school, what did you learn? I used to ask my son that all the time. What did you learn in school today? Oh, we learned math and we learned English. Like, they have these very just basic, they really don't want to talk about school anyway. But we need to start asking deeping, more probing questions. Did anybody cause harm to you today at school? Did anybody call you out of your name today at school? How did that make you feel? Did you tell someone? The person you told, what did they say? Has anyone at school bullied you today? Has anyone at your school touched you inappropriately? Like, these are questions that we have to ask. And I know that sometimes as parents, we get squeamish or feel kind of funny talking about these type of things with our children. But if you don't talk about these things with your children, someone else will. Whether it's another adult, and that adult may or may not have nefarious intentions, or it could be another child who may or may not have nefarious intentions. But I think, as sometimes as parents, we maybe feel like it's somebody else's job to teach our children about heavy topics. It's not. Everything starts at home. We say that all the time when it pertains to school, when it comes to discipline, when it comes to how your children is going to behave, when it comes to respect, everything starts at home. So we have to do a better job of asking the deeper, more probing questions. And that's with anything. It's not just at school, even with the Boy Scouts. There have been situations in the Boys and Girl Scouts of America where these camp counselors or camp leaders have access to these children and they do things with these children. And the parents are just la-di-da sitting at home like, oh, my child is having a great experience with the Boys and Girls Club or Boys and Girl Scouts, and they're being traumatized by people who, most of the times, people that have these feelings towards children, they go looking for positions that they can get where they're going to be working with children. And so again, that goes to how do we better vet these people who are going to be in positions where we're putting them in charge of our children. And we always tell our children from a young age to respect authority, respect adults and all of this stuff. But we don't tell them, respect them unless they do this. Family members too, church. And I was getting there. Like there's been a whole thing with the Catholic Church for years, abusing young boys. And so many times parents don't want to believe that this is happening in the church, or it's happening in the school, or it's happening with the family members. Guess what? It's happening every day. And if you're not taking the necessary steps, and if you're not having the appropriate conversations, your children are going to get caught up in these traps. They're going to be caught up in situations that will have a negative impact on them for the rest of their lives. Okay? And yeah, there is no more stranger danger, because most of the time people are abused by people that they know. When I was abused, I've talked about this on the show before. I was abused by my babysitter's 14-year-old daughter. I was 6. Okay. With my situation, when it happened, I didn't think of it as a negative thing. For me at the time, being 6 years old, for more context, the year prior to that, I had found my father's X-rated magazine when I was 5. And so just by looking at these things that I didn't really know what I was looking at, when this situation happened with this 14-year-old girl when I was 6, at the time, I felt like it was a normal thing to happen because of the things I had seen in these magazines, right? A man is touching a woman is touching a man. That's what she did. She touched me. She let me touch her. And for me, at 6 years old, I viewed that as just being my first sexual experience. I didn't realize probably until the end of high school, when I started talking about these things with one of my girlfriends in high school, and she looked at me disgustedly, and she was like, "Vince, she should not have done that to you." And I was like, "She didn't really do nothing. It was a little touching here and there, a little, here." She was like, "No, you were sexually assaulted." And that was the first time I had heard the word sexual assault used in regards to me. But even then, I think I was in 11th, 12th grade at the time. I brushed it off. It wasn't until I got to college, and I think I might have been in my junior year of college. I want to say that this experience when I was 6 years old, it hypersexualized. And I didn't even know it. So when I was in college and I don't do relationships, I'm just trying to have sex with as many women as possible. I don't have any commitment. I can't commit to relationships or anything. And I'm just hypersexualized. The woman that I was dating, she actually told me, she's like, Vince, you're hyper. How can you say you weren't negatively impacted by that situation when you've been hypersexualized? You had sex with X amount of people, women, and this, that, other, and what? How can you say that that didn't have a negative impact? So my junior year in college was the first time I really realized that I'm really sexually assaulted like that. That should not have happened, and I should not look at that as something to be proud of. Which up until that point, I had, because as one commenter just said, some people don't believe that boys and men can be sexually assaulted. Even one of the commenters on this story about Jacqueline Ma, he said, man, she didn't cause no harm to them boys. Them little boys living the dream. They're going to be all right. It happened to me when I was 12, and I'm just fine. And I'm like, and so all of these women started coming at him in the comments, and they were like, you are not fine. What you just typed is not an okay statement to type, like you're glorifying these two young boys being sexually assaulted, and that's not right. And there were many people coming at him, and he doubled down, tripled down, quadrupled down on his statement, which it saddened me. But at the same time, I understood, because prior to my junior year in college, I had the same mind state that he had. I wasn't sexually assaulted. I just had my first sexual experience with an older woman. That's it. And so then as I got older, I realized that the 14-year-old who did that to me was having that done to her. Because that doesn't just happen. You don't get these type of ideas and these thoughts out of nowhere. And so even for me as an adult, realizing that she was being abused, that made me feel some type of way, because it's like this endless cycle. I've talked about on this show before where I dated, because I was hypersexualized, I dated a lot of women in college. But I treated women like women when I was with them, although my problem was I couldn't just have one. Anyway, there are many of these women that told me about their own sexual abuse stories. And there was a good number of people who shared these stories with me. And it just made me realize, like, this is an epidemic. Like, this is a real problem, not only in this country, but in the world. Like, children are being abused every day. So parents, we have to do a better job of communicating with our children. When my son was 3 years old, I told him, no one touches your private parts. No one. Your butt, your pee-pee, no one touches them. His mom reiterated the same thing. No one touches your pee-pee and your hymen, is what she used to tell him. I started telling my son that at 3, because I wanted him to know that no one should be doing that to you. And if it does, you need to come tell me and I will handle it. And so we need to have as early as we know our children can comprehend, we need to have these conversations. I have a question here. If a parent catches their male child in a sexual situation, is it okay for them to high-five the boy but belittle their daughter? No. That is the most ignorant double standard I have ever heard. Even with the young man I just told you that made the comment about those 2 young boys not being harmed, they were living the dream with this teacher. One of the ladies said, if this was pertaining, she said, I hope you don't have any daughters, because if something like this happened to your daughters, you wouldn't be saying the same thing. And he did say, this young man, he said, yeah, you're right. He said, if somebody did this to my daughter, I would want to hurt them. He said, but if someone did this to my son, I would just be like, I talk to my son and I big him up and tell him that, ain't nothing wrong with it. Which I was happy that he was able to see that the situation with the girls would be horrible, but he just wasn't able to equate that same horrificness uh, with the boys. And I don't understand that type of mentality, but it is not okay either way. No one should be traumatizing our children. Um, and so that's that with this story. I didn't realize we were almost to 3 o'clock, but these first two stories, they really hit home with me because it's causing damage to children, and children are our most precious commodity on this planet, and we have to do everything we can to protect them to make sure that they grow up in the safest, most secure environment possible. Um, my third story was going to be about how Donald Trump is dismantling the Department of Education, but I really don't have time to go into all of that. But I will say this about him dismantling the Department of Education. It is going to have the most negative impact on the most poorest community. He's getting rid of federal oversight. He's giving the power back to the states for the states to allocate the money they receive. If they receive any from the federal government, states can allocate it the way they want to, which means instead of spending the money on poor students, disabled students, things of that nature, if they wanted to, they could spend the money on school voucher programs. And I encourage you to research school voucher programs. They are not a good thing for the poor community. School voucher programs basically means you're getting money from the government. You're getting public fund money from the government, which goes to the voucher. And the voucher helps to pay for your tuition at a private school. So basically, the voucher program is basically Donald Trump and his administration. They're trying to privatize education. And when you privatize education, of course, there's less oversight. These private schools, they can let who in, who they want to let in. They can keep out who they want to keep out. Poor communities, you think they really want you in there? And so if you're pulling money from public schools to give the people to send their students to private schools, as the student population dwindles from public schools, a public school's funding is based on their enrollment. So if you're losing students and they're going to the private sector, you're losing overall funding. If parents are contributing, if they are contributing to paying taxes, property taxes and stuff, so the government can have money, you're losing that to the private schools also. And so that's going to leave public school with less students. It's going to leave them with less qualified teachers. It's going to leave them with less resources. And no federal government oversight. So what is that going to do to public schools? You're going to have students with the highest needs, whether they have behavioral problems, discipline problems, learning problems. You're going to have a concentration of these students in public schools, and these schools are going to have the least qualified teachers to deal with these students. And they're going to have the least amount of resources to educate these students. That sounds to me like a recipe to continue the school to prison pipeline. Because if these students aren't being properly educated and properly taken care of, properly fed, they're going to eventually turn to other things, which are not going to be good for the community. So I think we really need to kind of keep an eye on what's going on with Trump dismantling the Department of Education, because it's gonna have a severely long negative impact on poor communities. Poor and rural communities are going to have it hard when it comes to education. So, as I said before, when it came to racism, to make a plan for your child's education and for their future. Homeschooling, I've talked before on this program about homeschooling. There's a large segment of our community that is going to homeschooling because of things such as racism, because of things such as sexual abuse in schools. So, yeah, we have to have a plan because no one knows what things are going to look like at the end of the next 4 years. But what I can say is that at the end of the next 4 years, things are going to be harder for Black and brown people, for poor communities, for disabled communities, for women, for all communities that have been disenfranchised for so long. We seem to be regressing right now as a society. And if you don't have a plan, you're going to be caught up in this chaos in the worst way. So please come up with a plan. All right. With that, I'm going to get ready to close the show. Someone says, "What are my thoughts on the white South Africaners being brought in?" Well, as I said before, it's not surprising. I am not surprised or dismayed by anything this administration is doing. Let me say that. But that's only because for the past 15 years, I have studied the history of this country. I have studied the history of racism in this country. I have studied the racists in this country. And I can tell you now that the problems Black community suffers, problems, Hispanic community problems, for white community problems, for disabled communities, problems for any disenfranchised community in this country is because of racists in power. That's it. The racists in power want to keep us divided. They want to keep us attacking each other. So we want focus on the people who are the real problem, which is the 1% at the top, 1% that controls 90% of the wealth in this country. So my thoughts on them coming in, not only did he bring them in, he fast-tracked, because you remember we're supposed to be under a refugee freeze and all of that stuff, but not for the white South Africaners. He fast-tracked their path to citizenship here. And then when they got here, government rolled out a red carpet for them. We're glad you're here. We're so, what the man said? He said, we understand what you have been through in South Africa, and we understand your plight for freedom, and we welcome you here to America with open arms. I'm like, what? And so basically what they did is import South African apartheid hate to America. That's all they did. And their goal in doing so is plain and simple, Trump wants to make America the white Anglo-Saxon heaven that it was meant to be in 1776. That's it. They want to whiteify America by shipping out black and brown people, sending them to El Salvador or wherever this prison is, which seems highly unconstitutional, if you ask me. Pope, I don't really have any, I don't have thoughts on Pope Leo because my grandma always said if I don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. He's a brother. He's a brother. Well, that brother just said the other day in a news article that I saw Sunday that he doesn't identify as black. So I don't. Again, I don't have anything to say positive about any pope. Okay, because I don't know if you all know this. Again, I've been studying the history of this country for a very long time. It was the Pope in the Vatican that sanctioned black people to be used in slavery. Okay, they wanted to use the Native Americans at first, but they came to the conclusion that the Native Americans aren't strong enough; their immune systems are too weak, and they won't be able to endure the harsh conditions. Oh, but them Negroes, we can use them till the wheels fall off. So Pope, Vatican, they can all, yeah, okay. This is family programming. So I'm gonna keep it family. I love it. Appreciate y'all support. So before I go, there was a lot of heaviness today. I don't want to leave Conversation and Education WCEG Network with all of this heaviness. So I'm going to bring in a little bit of light to close out the show. I'm going to do my Scholar of the Week, and then I'm going to recite a poem called Hope. Okay, because I know a lot of people are feeling hopeless these days, and so I just want to instill people with that feeling of hope. And with that being said, I want to give a shout out to my scholar of the week. My scholar of the week this week is Adrian Ota, a 17-year-old African-American student at University High School in Newark, New Jersey. He graduated last year, May of 2024, with a high school diploma and a college degree. He was born to Nigerian immigrant parents who moved to the U.S. Ada said Ada was inspired by their sacrifices to make the most of his educational opportunities. He said, my true motivation was my parents, my immigrant parents. I know they didn't have the opportunity to do this. So when I had the opportunity, I just took it and ran with it. Now that sounds like a smart young man who knows how to make the most of an opportunity. He said his school offered the dual program where college professors teach college level courses to a select group of students. He said juggling high school classes and college level work wasn't easy. So he often stayed up late and often stayed after school to complete his college assignments. The hard work paid off. He has already racked up enough college credits to potentially earn a bachelor's degree by the time he is 19. So shout out to Mr. Ota for being my scholar of the week. Okay. With that being said, I'm going to end it with this. I wrote this poem called Hope, probably back in 2017, 2018. I was going through some things as we all go through from time to time. And I was feeling pretty hopeless. And so I wrote this poem called Hope to make myself feel better. So I hope you enjoy it. This is Hope by Ghetto Masada. Hope you are doing well. I hope your soul is in good spirits. I hope you get this message. I hope you take the time to hear it. I hope you love yourself unconditionally. Hope you never feel neglected. Hope you can treat others the same. Hope everyone can be respected. Hope that racism will soon end. Hope that we no longer see color. Hope that we can all get along. Hope that we can learn to love one another. Hope for fatherless babies. Hope for single mothers, we give you praise. Hope for absent daddies. Hope they see the error of their ways. Hope for future generations. Hope we care for our children. Hope we protect them from abuse. Hope we stop the senseless killings. Hope for your emptiness to be filled. Hope for a miracle healing. Hope that we can all change. I hope everybody is willing. Hope for being a better person. Hope for a new beginning. Hope that the story of your life has a very happy ending. Hope for hateful people. Hope that their hearts will soften. Hope that they learn how to love. Hope that you do it more often. Hope for joy and laughter. Hope for having a good time. Hope for your sanity. Hope for your peace of mind. Hope for facing challenges. Hope for being courageous. I hope that you can share a smile. I hope your smiling is contagious. Hope all your wishes come true. Hope you fulfill all your dreams. I hope you get all that and more. Hope you get everything in between. I hope you want more out of life. I hope you love more than material things. I hope you believe in yourself. I hope you never lose your self-esteem. I hope you know you are royalty. Hope you know your kings and queens. Hope you know that hope and faith are the belief in things unseen. Hope to ease your pain. Hope for a lot less heartache. Hope that you find real love. Hope your heart never has to break. Hope that you get everything you want. I hope that you never have to take. I hope your prayers will be answered. And I hope you don't have to wait. Hope because God loves us. Hope he can increase your faith. Hope for forgiveness and grace. Hope to see you at heaven's gate. Hope for spiritual well-being. Hope for the good of goodness sake. Hope wisdom and knowledge befriend you. Hope love will conquer hate. Hope you know all this is possible. Hope you know all this is true. I hope you hold on to your hope because that's why God gave it to you. Hope you received the good news. I hope you've heard the latest. Hope you know of all God's gifts that hope and love are the greatest. Thank you very much. This has been our summer, our final program before we break for the summer. I appreciate each and every one of my audience members, my listeners in Atlanta and Florida and around the world. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We will be back in September to kick off year 10. WCEG is turning 10 years old, baby. Congratulations to everyone. Congratulations to Kenny. Much love, peace, and blessing. Peace.